Why sleep is important, we're going to do 3 main parts. How our bodies know when and how to sleep, like the actual science behind it. In a layman's terms, we're not going to get too nitty-gritty. And then we're going to cover 10 factors that are affecting our sleep. I picked out 10. I summarized them into 6 on that sheet. And they're each kind of what I think are the most important things that are affecting our sleep. So it'll be super interesting. I'm biased, though. And I do have to mention, this is, kind of a given, but I'm not a licensed doctor. I don't have a PhD. I'm not a registered dietitian, all that stuff. So what we talk about are my suggestions. It is not meant to be taken as directives. If you do want to make any big changes, consult with your doctor, stuff like that. All right, so let's get into things. Why is getting sleep so important? I mean, because we know it is important, right? You could feel it when you're not getting it. But what exactly is it doing beneficial for our body, or why is it so important? So the top 3 reasons, and we'll go into each of these. And then I'll grab my notes too real quick. Okay, first one, physical healing. And that sounds obvious, right? But why do we heal when we sleep? There's something called a human growth hormone, HGH for short, also called the youth hormone. Kids produce a lot more of it. That's why you see a kid fall, they get up, they're fine, no sweat, they don't need sleep, they rebound. Humans, we don't make as much, so we have a harder time bouncing back, but we do still create this human growth hormone. And partly, if we don't get good sleep, we're not producing it as much, and we'll get into when that happens. Which is why if you get a bad night's sleep, A, you're going to feel worse physically. B, you even look worse a little bit. Someone's like, oh my gosh, you look tired today. You're like, oh, thanks. All right, the second reason it's really important is our memory processing. So not just physically are we healing, but our brain is taking that time to process all our data from the day into short-term memory, and then that becomes longer-term memory. And I think about it like a library, which you're in, right? You have people coming in and out all day long, all this input, all this data. When the library closes its doors, no more new data. They finally have time to restock everything, organize it. If we just stayed open all the time, if your brain was constantly taking in information, you would just be overloaded and not memorize hardly anything. They've done a lot of cool studies with college kids and executives trying to study all night, study more and get less sleep versus study less, get more sleep. And they found that you definitely retain more, even if you study less, by just getting good sleep. Because otherwise your short-term memory is not locking in all that. So I'm like, I wish I would have known this before. I went to UC Davis and did all that because I definitely pulled all-nighters and suffered. And it really didn't do much for me. Yeah, no, it's not fun anyways. Have you guys done that? Stayed out 24? Yeah? It's hard. It's really hard. And then the third reason, it's important for our metabolization. So we need sleep. It's interesting because even when we're asleep, we're still burning calories, right? We're not dead. Our brain's still active, which is why we dream and all this stuff. We're healing tissue. We're doing all this stuff. So it's giving our body time to rest and restore all these things that during the day, we need to put energy somewhere else. Like we're moving, we're running, we're eating, digesting, and when we're sleeping, we can kind of take that time. Our body is also like, okay, now I can take time to heal and burn fat and do all these things. So really, really important for that. It's also kind of cool, if you think about it, it's creating a fast just by default. So if you sleep for 8 hours, that's 8 hours without eating at all. So your body's going to this natural fast state as well. So for weight loss, people take advantage of it. They'll sleep and then they don't eat the first part of the day. And I'm not going to go into intermittent fasting right now, but it is helpful because your body's already naturally in that fast state. You obviously aren't consuming food when you're eating, I hope, unless you're an insane sleepwalker. And I've seen those videos. I'm like, oh my gosh, you wake up and there's like a cake in your bed. That'd be terrible. Yeah. And sleep is also good. If we're up and we're tired, like late at night, or you wake up in the middle of the night, a lot of times you are craving those sugary, sweet foods, the cookies, the candies, the ice cream, the breads, things like that. It's because your body's tired. It wants sleep, but it's like, oh, I can't have that right now. So it wants that quick energy source. So if we deprive ourselves from sleep, we're more apt to eat those bad foods and crave that. And if you wake up in the middle of the night, you get those munchies and you just want something gross out of the fridge. So that's kind of why that happens. But sleep, super important for these 3 things. Okay, without getting too sciencey, I promise, we're going to go into like what is sleep. So okay, I close my eyes, I'm unconscious. Sometimes I dream, but I don't really understand what's going on. So, really interesting. It's based on two factors. One, you have a stimulant, which is an outside force, and in this case, it's light. We have natural light, ideally, from the earth as our stimulant, and then we have a reaction, which is our hormones. And our bodies are perceiving this stimulant, the light that's coming in, and light is simply a pattern of wavelengths throughout the day. And we live in a 24-hour cycle here on Earth, and throughout the day, those wavelengths change. The morning, our bodies notice the difference. Morning light is different than evening light, different than afternoon light, and we can sense that, even though consciously it's like, well, I know it's light because it's lighter, but our bodies are very, very smart, more than we give them credit for. So we are sensing the light changes, and then our bodies react to it by releasing different hormones at certain times of the day. Let's see. There we go. So in the daytime, when our bodies sense it's light in the morning, we're releasing something called cortisol. Super important. It's also been nicknamed the stress hormone, so it gets a kind of a bad rep, but we actually need it. That's what helps us get moving, energized in the morning. We want that burst of cortisol to get our energy up to be awake. Cortisol at night is going to keep us from being asleep. So it's bad when you're stressed in the evening or stressing your body. In the daytime, it's a good thing. We naturally release it. And in the night, the opposite happens. We release melatonin, which you probably have heard about, and that's the sleep hormone, and that's going to make us tired, do the exact opposite. So these two work in perfect harmony, ideally, but we're going to get into why that often doesn't happen. And finally, you might have heard of a circadian rhythm. It's also called a sleep-wake cycle. All of this, the light coming in, making our bodies produce either cortisol or melatonin, helps us set our sleep-wake cycle. So our bodies also get on this 24-hour cycle. We're mimicking the natural light that's coming as the earth turns, and we create a cycle, or not, if we mess that up. And it's telling us when we need to be awake, when to sleep, rest, and heal. And we need to follow cues from nature, and we'll get in how to do that to create this good circadian rhythm. Because if we are all messed up and this is out of whack, our sleep is going to be out of whack. So we'll go into how to naturalize our circadian rhythm. All right. And then the second part, so that's kind of how we get sleepy, the hormones involved and all of that. And we'll go into when you're actually sleeping, what is happening. So when you're asleep, it's actually your brain, like we said, it's still active, right? You're not dead. You're not comatose. Almost, but not quite. You're going through brain waves. And if you've ever had, like they have Oura rings and things now you can track your sleep cycles, but it almost looks like a seismic wave. So you're not staying stable throughout the night. Your brain's getting active, less active, less active. And this is totally normal. One cycle of sleep is about 90 minutes or an hour and a half. And you do this repeatedly over the night. So you'll do 90 minutes, 90 minutes, 90 minutes, meaning you go into light sleep, light sleep, deep sleep. And that's why if you wake up in the middle of a cycle and you're not in that light sleep, you feel real groggy. And sometimes you wake up and you're like, oh, I feel better. Sometimes, especially if you're in the middle of a dream, you're like, oh my gosh, it's really hard to get up. And let's see, did I put that on there? I did, okay. So we'll go over real quick there's 4 different brain waves that you go through. You start in beta state, which is waking state. Right now, our brains are all in beta. We are awake, we are alert, we are here. And then one step below that is alpha, also called the flow state. People talk about the flow state when they're doing something they really enjoy, they're crafting, they are just kind of in the zone, they'll talk about it. Like you're awake and conscious, but you're relaxed and your brain is slightly more lowered. And then there's theta, and that's where kids spend a lot of time, and it's almost like that daydreamy, when you're not asleep, not quite awake, imaginary land, still some consciousness, but not really totally awake. And finally, delta brainwaves, that's our deep sleep, which includes non-REM and REM sleep. And we'll go over what both of those are as well. So what is REM sleep? REM stands for rapid eye movement. If you ever see someone when they're asleep, it's kind of creepy. When they're in REM, you can literally see their eyes moving under their eyelids like really fast. And so it's, aptly named. But that's when our brain is doing that memory consolidation. I talked about the library. It's processing the things from the day. And that's why limiting sleep, especially that deep REM sleep, is going to be really bad for our memory and our cognition. And non-REM, it's also just as important. It just means you're deep sleep when you're not in that REM dream stage, and that's when we release those human growth hormones. So both just equally important. A lot of people talk about REM sleep and forget about non-REM, but deep sleep in general, we absolutely need it. Just keep in mind, it comes on a wave. All right. So now we have a little bit of background on kind of why sleep works, what it is. Let's go into those 10 factors affecting our sleep. And we'll do one at a time. So number 1, we'll talk about lighting. All right. As we mentioned, our bodies follow that circadian rhythm that's mimicking or trying to mimic the sunlight, as our ancestors would have. Because they know when it's light outside, you want to be active. You need to be out gathering food, getting animals, doing all your stuff. And when it's dark, you can't do much. There might also be predators. So time to relax, sleep, be chill, go into your cave, whatever it may be. All right. So the problem is, we still as humans have a circadian rhythm, but we in no way follow the natural light anymore. Because in modern society, right, we have lights, we have shutters, we can mess up the light and all sorts of stuff. It could be dark when it should be light, right? I have blackout curtains, I have my eye mask, I'm inside my dark office all day, or it should be light when it's supposed to be dark. It's nighttime, but I have overhead lights, TV on, laptop, screen. So your poor body's just like, I don't know what time of day it is, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. You're releasing cortisol at night, melatonin in the morning. So the problem is not with our bodies, it's just we haven't adapted to how we live in modern society. And so once you're aware of how we can change that, you can kind of alter your environment around you. And I guarantee you will get better sleep if you're able to make some of these changes. I used to be a terrible sleeper, like awful growing up, and now I sleep like a baby. I love it. And I dream. I keep a dream journal now because I'm like, I never used to dream because I couldn't get that much deep sleep. So super awesome. All right, we went over how hormones control our circadian function. One I did not mention yet is serotonin. You may have heard of that as well. It's like the feel-good hormone. It's increased a lot by sunlight, and funny enough, it's a precursor to melatonin. So not a lot of people know that you need serotonin to make melatonin. We also, in today's world, a lot of people don't get outside very much. We don't get that natural sunlight. And so, even though we're getting sunlight in the daytime, later, like at nighttime, our bodies are going to use that to make melatonin. So if we're not getting outside, getting light, sunlight, we don't have as much ingredients to make melatonin. So it kind of sounds counterintuitive, but you need daylight in the morning to be sleepy at night. Our bodies know what they're doing. We just kind of ignore it sometimes. So yeah, big key here. We want to mimic natural light as much as possible. Obviously, we can't be outside 24/7. So inside, what we're going to try to do is mimic what's happening outside. So if I can't be out there, but it's daylight and I wake up, I turn on all my lights immediately. As the sun's going down, and with the seasons too, I know it's hard because it's dark at like 5 o'clock in the winter, but I will at least start to dim my lights. I have no overhead lights, and we'll get into certain tips to use. So I'm trying to make my environment like the outside. When I sleep, it should be dark, and we'll get into why as well. Okay, I just said that. Daytime, early light. Natural light if you can. Overhead, I do like these overhead lights. Even though it's not the same as getting sunlight, it's still mimicking the position of the light. So I will turn on all my overhead lights early in the morning if I can't get outside, because in nature, the sun would be up there as well. And opposite for nighttime, I would make sure I don't have my overhead lights on, because that's where the sun would be. And I will use lamps, salt lamps, regular lamps, things that are below eye level. Yeah, so I put that on there. No overhead, lower, like not so bright. And we'll go into later about the different colors of light. There's wavelengths in light. You might have heard that blue light is bad, especially to your sleep, and we'll talk about why that is. But at night, for now, you do want to get less of that bright, like that whitish blue light, also that comes from our screens. You can buy bulbs that are warmer. You can buy salt lamps that are naturally have that warm hue. It's not going to wake you up as much. The light changes, the wavelengths during the day. When the sun first comes up, it's got all these bright blue, white hues, and towards the sunset, it's got red or orange. So our bodies, also really smart, they can tell the difference in the color of wavelengths as well. And then if we're mimicking, when we go to sleep, it should be as dark as possible. I mean, like pitch black. And let's see. I didn't click that. Okay. Yeah, which growing up, I had a little nightlight. I was afraid of it, but now I cannot sleep with even if there's like a little red light. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's bothering me. I go to a hotel, I'm like, I can't do this. And the reason this is because we have things called photoreceptors, photo meaning light, receptor meaning receiving or sensing, all over our skin, not just our eyeballs. So a lot of us think if I sit here and I cover my eyes, oh, it looks dark, I could totally fall asleep like this. And you might be able to, but the problem is your body is still sensing all the light that your eyes aren't. So you have photoreceptors on your skin. It sounds kind of like animalistic and a little crazy, but no one talks about it. I have this really cool study. I mean, they've done a lot of studies on it, but there's one in particular I thought was amazing. But they had participants sleep in a completely dark room, and once they were asleep, they put an LED light the size of like a quarter behind their knee, like somewhere totally random. And then they tracked their sleep cycles, and that was enough to disrupt like their sleep cycles during the night. It's amazing, yeah. And not saying like I can't tell you like if that red light would do it or if that, how bright it has to be, but it does play a role. And you might be able to fall asleep, but it's hard when we're asleep to know the quality we're getting. You might just wake up tired and be like, what the heck, I got 8 hours of sleep, like I'm still tired, but you might not be getting good sleep. So light might be one of those things. Tips I have on this: buy blackout curtains. If you don't want to pay for them or don't have them, foil works just as good. You can literally tape foil, or I bring it, to a hotel room. You can tape it up on your window. Electrical tape, that's nice for covering like those bright alarm clock lights, the TV, red lights, things like that. Buy a dimmable alarm clock. So I have one that I can press a button and it completely turns off, and I can set it to turn on at a time of day. And like I said, salt lamps, they're pink, they glow nice and red and deep. So things like that. All right, let's go into our second factor, which is temperature. Am I talking slow enough? Are you guys doing okay? All right, I'm bombarding you, but that's good. Good. That's the point. Awesome. So the second thing affecting us is temperature, because like the light outside, the temperature changes throughout the day, right? No matter where you are in the world, even if we're in Palm Desert in the summer, it could be 110 in the day, and at night it might get down to 90, but it's still dropping. And your body is going to notice that drop. And so, depending on the season and where you are in the world, they found around 9 o'clock p.m. on average, your body goes through something called thermal regulation. This happens no matter where you are. And that means, ideally, our bodies are going to lower our core temperature by 1 degree, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it does make a huge difference, especially if you think about the other way when you have a fever. It's like just a couple degrees is a big deal. So lowering it by 1 degree is a big deal, and we need that to sleep. So experts have estimated the ideal sleeping temperature, meaning like in your bedroom, to get better sleep and to help your body drop that 1 degree is between 62 and 68 degrees. You don't want to be freezing either, but you want it to be cooler than you think. And when you're bundled under covers, you don't really feel it as much, but if you're tossing and turning, you've had those nights where it's hot and you're just like, oh my gosh, I cannot sleep. Your body's having a hard time cooling itself, almost like a computer hard drive. It needs a fan, something to lower that core temperature. So, I didn't put it on here, but there's also a cool study. I'm very nerdy. I love the statistics, and I love when they do these weird studies. But they took a bunch of insomniacs, people with chronic insomnia, meaning they cannot sleep, and they put something called a cooling cap on them. So it goes over the head. This is in a laboratory, and it helps it helps lower your core temperature through that. So they put this on them, track their sleep, and those insomniacs ended up sleeping better than the non-insomniac, like the regular sleepers in the study without the cooling cap. So there is a huge correlation between temperature and sleep. It's just, again, not something we hear about a lot or no one has ever told us. So some tips for trying to help keep us cool. They sell, there's all sorts of stuff now. Mattresses, sheets, pillows, covers, all sorts of things that are like cooling pillows, and they do help.
Cooling socks?
There's a bunch of, I guarantee there's cooling socks.
My feet are always cold.
What's funny? Oh, I put wearing socks circulation. That's the opposite side. If you are cold, but you want to keep your body core low, but you're like, oh, but I still feel cold, put on socks. That's what I do. I actually sleep in socks, which Greg thinks is the weirdest thing ever, but I'm like, but I'm not as cold. And it's true because that's where a lot of your heat is lost. So if you are trying to be cooler, but you're cold, I would just, put nice socks on. That's fine. It'll still help your core temp lower, but you won't feel so like, Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that. And it's a woman thing too. And I'm like, I got to look into that, why it is, but women just are naturally colder than men. All right, our third factor. We're going to get into alcohol and caffeine and how they affect us if we consume them during the day. So caffeine is a stimulant, meaning it affects our nervous system. And it has a half-life of about 8 hours for most people. And a half-life, every molecule has a half-life. And what that means is after 8 hours, half of the amount of that caffeine you ingested will still be somewhere in your system. So if I have 120 milligram cup of coffee, 8 hours later, there's still going to be 60 milligrams somewhere floating around. Not as much, but it takes a while to get out of your system. And a key thing I put up here is try to avoid drinking after lunch and first thing after waking. Are you guys coffee drinkers?
Coffee, yes.
Yes.
But I can't
Do you drink coffee?
alcohol after you wake up.
Yeah.
Avoid drinking after lunch, first thing after waking.
Yeah, and we'll go into that as well.
You're not supposed to have coffee first thing.
Yeah, so kind of people know like, oh yeah, I shouldn't, like it's past my caffeine curfew. So why shouldn't we have it first thing after waking? So that actually plays into the cortisol we were talking about. So imagine you're sleeping, you wake up, first thing you do is go for coffee. Your body is still trying to produce that cortisol naturally to help you wake up. If you shoot it with a bunch of caffeine, you're already up. Your body's like, oh, I don't really need as much. But now that's affecting the whole rest of your circadian rhythm. So it's kind of affecting, and I'm not saying like don't drink it in the morning, just not like within the first hour maybe. So you give your body a chance to naturally build its own. I know, I got to be the bad guy here. Yes.
What if you, let's say, wake up at 4 a.m., use the bathroom,
Yeah.
and then you can't get back to sleep,
Mm-hmm.
and then you finally drink your first cup at like 7 a.m. Would that be okay?
Hey, if your morning is 4 a.m., that is fine. If you're committed to staying up, that sucks, and I've been there too. 4 a.m., that's the worst time too. Because I'm like, if it's 3 or 2, it's like, oh, I still have time to go back. 4 and 5, you're like, oh my gosh.
Like, that's my problem. Like, I wake up to use the bathroom real quickly.
Yeah.
I don't want the sugar. I don't want the food.
Yeah.
I don't have that.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I get back to bed. I put the little sock over my eye.
Yeah.
Trying to get back to sleep. And I'm like,
No.
and then an hour later, I'm like, oh, well, it's getting light out. I can tell.
Yeah. You can tell.
Yeah.
When you get up to use the bathroom, are you using like overhead lights at all?
No.
Okay, good. Because I didn't realize that was affecting me because I used to go to the bathroom every night, like in the middle of the night, and I would turn on my lights to use the restroom. I'm like, oh my gosh, my body's confused. But you might also be mentally, you're like thinking about it, 4 a.m. in the clock. And we'll go over how to like work with our mental state too. 'Cause sometimes it's just a mental thing.
Well, I know not to look at the clock.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh. That's the worst. Oh my God. Oh my gosh. I really dislike that. That's so funny. I resonate so much with that. Oh no, you're good. I love it. Yeah. So partly because of our cortisol, we want our bodies to naturally create that because if we take control for it, it's going to be like, well, I don't got to do anything. And then you're going to get tired in that like afternoon slump time area because you don't have enough cortisol. Your body's not, and then you're like, oh, I need more coffee now or something. And we just blame it on the afternoon slump. And another reason I wouldn't drink it first thing is because we mentioned the fast. Our bodies are naturally fasting, but we're also really dehydrated because we haven't drinking water for 8 hours. So for diehard coffee lovers who are like, no, I have to. I'm like, okay, do me a promise. You need to drink water before coffee, like a lot of water. Because that will at least help give your body something. Your organs are desperately craving water first thing in the morning. Even if you don't feel thirsty, I make myself chug water. And then that way, when you drink your coffee, which is a diuretic, which helps, to further dehydrate you, it won't be as bad. And so I used to do it too all the time. I'd wake up, first thing, just drink coffee. I don't even think I'd have water like for a couple hours when I was like in college. And I'm like, oh, my poor body. Like, what was I doing to it? So that's what I would say about, coffee in the morning. And then there's the people who are like, oh, I can have coffee afternoon, no problem. I can drink coffee at 8 p.m. and sleep just fine. And I'm like, well, yeah, you can probably fall asleep fine, but your quality of sleep is absolutely going to be affected. And again, we don't really notice that. We kind of get used to being tired, or we think it's normal, so we don't notice it. But when we drink caffeine, because it has that super long half-life, it's still in our system, and it's still going to interact and mess with our sleep, that deep sleep especially. So I'm like, okay, even if you can do it, that's cool. I'm jealous, but try not to, because you will not be getting as good a sleep. All right, so tips for that, like I said, avoid afternoon. I used to hate when I heard this. Substitute it with gentler sources of caffeine. I recently kicked caffeine like a couple months ago, and it was hard. Like, we do genuinely get addicted to it, and it feels amazing. And I didn't like tea, so I drink something called chicory root now, which tastes like coffee. It mimics it, or decaf. I'm like, okay, I think I just got in the habit of drinking something, but I wish I could like tea. What do you normally drink instead of coffee? Do you? Man, I'm trying to get there. Did you like it originally, or you took time to transition over?
I've never drank coffee.
Oh, wow.
I drink non-caffeine.
Yeah, like herbal teas and things like that. That's so cool. Okay, so we went over caffeine, and let's go about alcohol now. Opposite of caffeine, right? It's a depressant, and it works a little differently. If we're drinking normal, I'm not saying if you chug, 5 shots in an hour, but typically it stays in our system 2 hours after the last drink we've had. Also, depending how much water we're drinking, which is going to help flush our system even more. So for caffeine, we avoid drinking very, very first thing after waking and after lunch. And for alcohol, we're going to try to stop 2 to 4 hours before bedtime. And we'll go into why. There we go. So I never knew this until I became a health coach, but you've heard of hangovers and blackouts, I'm sure. Maybe we've had some before. But that is actually caused not directly from the alcohol, but what the alcohol is doing to our sleep. So people talk about nightcaps too, like really big back in the day, right? Gotta have a nightcap before bed. And yes, it does help you fall asleep because it relaxes you. It gets you in that mode for sleep, but it's going to affect again with that REM sleep. So you get bad quality sleep, which is why sometimes you might wake up in the middle of the night. If you drink like wine too close to bedtime, then it's hard to go back to sleep, or you feel tired the next day. It's because it's interacting with that REM sleep. And the reason hangovers happen, we're kind of piecing everything together, right? So if my alcohol is interacting with my body's ability to get to that deep sleep, I can't use that human growth hormone. I can't heal myself. So you wake up feeling just like physically, ugh. You're like, why? It's like you didn't get to that sleep point. Same with blackouts or grayouts. So sometimes people wake up and like, I don't really remember what happened last night, or it's kind of fuzzy. Again, it's because your brain didn't get to that point where it was able to consolidate your memories. Sometimes people can't remember anything at all. And that's really scary, but it's because you were not able to get that sleep quality. I thought that was super interesting. I'm like, no one explained it that way to me. All right, so tips for alcohol. Avoid the nightcaps. Just keep it, dinner time, totally fine. Drink water during or after, like I mentioned, if you are drinking, to help metabolize that alcohol through your system a little bit better. All right, we're doing it. We're making it. Number 4, setting boundaries in the bedroom. This one I really like, and some people are going to hate, maybe. We'll see. So, the bedroom should be reserved for the 3 S's only. Sleep, obviously. If we're sick, and for sex. Nothing else. And I mean literally nothing else. Yeah, I store clothes in there, and you might get dressed in there. But I mean, do not hang out in there. Do not watch TV in there. Don't play games in the bedroom. Our brains are really good at making neuroassociations. Which means if I do something repeatedly, and this is how we learn. This is how we learned how to write and speak and do anything. But if I associate the bedroom with anything else, it's going to be hard for me to associate more with sleep. So the stronger I can make that connection for bedroom and bed especially is just sleep. Not watching TV, not scrolling Instagram, just sleep. It's going to actually help you fall asleep more because you're going to deeper ingrain that connection. So this one's hard. I highly suggest keeping out of the bed. Pets, kids, and babies. And this one's really, especially the pets. People are like, oh, I love my dog. He loves sleeping with me. I'm like, okay, have you tracked your sleep quality when your dog's actually in your bed? And I have 2 cats, and I used to try to sleep with them all the time. And I would sleep, but I just never felt great. And it's because in the night, they're moving, they're doing stuff, they're there, and your sleep quality is getting messed up, and you don't even realize it. So, like, if you can try, please keep these out of the beds, because it is affecting. Maybe you don't realize it, and that's the problem with sleep, is a lot of it we're unconscious anyways, so we don't know what's going on. But there we go. No electronics either, and that's really hard. Like, I'll bring my phone in to set an alarm and do certain things, but if you need to use your phone, if you need to do stuff on your computer, try not to do it in your bed. Like, go to a desk, definitely don't do things that are stimulating. And most things on a screen are stimulating, right? Even if we're just playing a game, that's kind of stimulating your brain. Even if we feel tired, something is still happening, and it's going to delay that good deep sleep a little bit. And we'll go over to talking about blue lights and screens. Have you guys heard of the blue light glasses or like blue light blockers before? It's kind of a big thing coming out. And we'll talk about what I think about those later. But another reason to keep electronics out, like I said, neuroassociations, these are big dopamine releasers, right? You even look at your phone, they've done studies, like even glancing at it, you don't feel it, but your brain gets a little bit excited because you associate this with, Facebook and friends and connecting and the unknown. There might be an email or there might be a something, So just even having this on our bedside table, even if it's off, I literally will keep mine outside my room, or I'll hide it or I'll chuck it. Like, I'll make sure I do not see it because our brain is going to associate that device with excitement. Same as a TV. I do not have a TV in my bedroom, and laptop. I will not bring my computer in my bedroom. So this is not a very popular slide for some, but really, really important. So tips, going back to the old, good old alarm clock. Like I said, you can, we all have alarms on here now, but it's a lot less tempting when you just have the basic alarm clock that you can set. And then some people are like, well, I need to set mine or my smartwatch, but I don't want my partner to wake up, so I need to have it with me, on me. They sell little vibrating alarm clocks that you just put under your pillow that are not on Wi-Fi, not linked to anything, and those are really nice. And that'll wake just you up and not your partner next to you. All right. I've never tried one. Well, I haven't needed one yet, but we'll see. I know I wake up earlier than Greg, so one day he's going to be like, oh my gosh. Very morning bird. Okay, we're halfway through. Timing. So we talked about a lot of things, but haven't really mentioned how much sleep to get. And everyone kind of knows the 8-hour thing, and that's been very popularized. Or I'll go back on that so we don't get ahead of ourselves. But 8 hours is simply the average that most people get. It is not a magic number. It does not mean you have to get 8 hours, which I used to stress out about. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not getting 8. Am I sleeping bad? Am I tired? No, and we'll get into why that is. It's more about getting sleep at the correct hours and good quality sleep than it is quality. You've heard quality over quantity. It's totally true with sleep. We want better quality sleep over the quantity. Part of the reason for this, and timing also means like when we're going to bed, when we're getting up, because that does matter as well. They found most of that melatonin is released between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. That means we're going to have better quality sleep in that deep of the night, which makes sense, right? Like our ancestors would be like, there's nothing I can do at this time anyways, I'm going to sleep. That's when they get the best sleep. It's really dark outside, really quiet. And I mentioned that 8 hours is not just the magic number. But most people do best on 7 to 9 hours, but it's going to vary on a lot of factors. So your sex, women actually need on average like an hour more of sleep than men do, which I had no idea, and I could have totally used that to my advantage many times. Age, younger people need more sleep. Older people might not need as much sleep, which might be related to activity level. If you have a super active job, obviously you might need more time for your body to rest and heal itself. You might need more sleep. Like we said, quality, way more important than quantity. You can get 9 hours of poor quality sleep, and it's nowhere near as beneficial as 6 hours of high quality sleep. So I actually sleep less now than I used to, and I feel better, and it's because I'm really maximizing that sleep that I'm getting. So tips for that as well. I've had people ask about naps before. I am totally okay with naps. I cannot take naps. I wish I could. I can't even sleep on airplanes. But if you use them strategically, are you the same?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, and cars, and it makes me tired, but I cannot sleep.
Where if you have to stay upright,
Yeah.
I sleep.
Yeah.
And like this was even after Charlotte was born, like I can be exhausted.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's the weirdest thing. And there's people who are like, they could fall asleep standing up. I'm like, how do you do it? Oh my gosh. Maybe it's a man thing too. I'm like, oh, that's so funny. So I am if you can nap, I am totally okay. And if you're sick too, like I'll nap. That's the only time I might be able to get to sleep, maybe. But use them strategically. So we talked about our sleep cycles being about 90 minutes, right? So if we try to take a nap, but we make it like 45 minutes, an hour, we're gonna wake up somewhere right in the middle of that, and we're gonna feel grosser than we did before the nap. And that has happened to a lot of people. You're like, oh, I wish I hadn't taken a nap at all, because now I feel worse. Well, it's because your body didn't get to complete that whole cycle, and it was disrupted. So a good time to sleep, if you are gonna nap, most people don't have an extra like hour and a half to do something and just lay down, but keeping it, under a half hour so you don't get into that deep, deep sleep. Like 10, 15, 20 minutes, totally fine. You will feel more rested. You'll get that little bit of break. You're not going to go into deep sleep, but it still does something. So little power naps are a thing. That's totally fine. All right, factor number 6, talking about movement. So getting better sleep at night is affected by how we act in the morning, kind of like that daylight. So what we do moving early in the day is going to affect our melatonin later in the day, which is kind of cool and frustrating. So even if it's only like 5 minutes, super important, try to be active within the first hour of waking. It's a lot easier than you think it is. I'm not saying, okay, you go run a mile when you wake up immediately. We'll get into what you can do. And the reason we want to do this, again, is with that cortisol, right? When we move, it's also telling our body, oh, okay, it's time to get up, I need to do things, I'm doing things, and we're going to release more of that cortisol. So we're just helping ourselves get on that natural circadian rhythm. Time you have workouts, if you do work out, or if you go on walks or whatever you guys do, when you do it also matters. Again, it's best to do in the morning. It does not have to be in the first hour. If you do a workout, better, much better in the morning. The reason for that is conversely, we want to avoid doing too much activity within 4 hours of bedtime, because if it's releasing cortisol, then we don't want to do that at night, right? And I know some people with schedules have to go to the gym after work and stuff, but they don't realize it's kind of hurting your ability to sleep later. And there's also people who are like, oh, I sleep great, I work out so hard, I'm just exhausted, I just pass out. And I'm like, well, passing out is way different than falling asleep. I'm like, you're passing out from exhaustion. That is not good sleep. Very different. All right, we mentioned that. I'm not saying all movement in the evening is bad. Like slow walking, low intensity yoga, qigong, tai chi, things like that, totally okay. And actually those can be very meditative and actually good and beneficial for sleep. But we don't want to be jogging or lifting any weights, even if they're light weights, doing stuff like that. Really hard housework. Save that for earlier in the day. All right, so tips for moving first thing in the morning. I mentioned this 5 to 10 minutes. It does not need to be a workout. I just mean get moving. Do something. You can walk around your house. You can clean. I use a rebounder, which is like one of those little trampolines. You don't have to jump that high. I just get on it, and I'm like half asleep still. And I'm like, after a minute, you're like, oh, I feel pretty good, man. And it's fun. The best thing probably you could do, especially for families, is, just play with your kids or animals or something. Just get your body moving. And it could be fun things, whatever you want. So moving within the first 5 to 10 minutes. And if you do work out or do something more, try to keep it in the first half of the day. All right, sleep factor number 7 is nutrition and meals. Like movement, what we eat is going to affect, everything affects sleep. Everything affects sleep. What we eat is going to affect our sleep quality, especially what we eat closer to bedtime, like dinner or our late night snacks. And this goes for a lot of things, but with sleep too, really important to limit the processed foods, simple carbs, which is things like refined flours, so things, breads, pastas, stuff like that, all the good juicy things, and sugars. And the reason for that is they're going to increase glucose levels, which just means sugar, blood sugar, because all those things, even simple carbs, that's being converted to sugar in our body. So when we increase our sugar level, it produces an insulin spike. Same thing if you've seen a kid, No one in their right mind would be like, okay, kid, here's candy, now go to bed. Same with adults. Like, we think we're different. We're not different. We can just control it better. And you don't feel it quite as much, but still, that stuff is happening. This is still happening like a kid in your body if you're eating that giant slice of cake and all those cookies right before bed. You're still the kid eating sugar, you know. Those blood sugar spikes, even if you can fall asleep, sometimes it takes time. When it does spike, it's enough to interrupt your sleep cycles, and sometimes people even can wake up from it, and you might not realize it or know that you're awake, but it's really disruptive to our sleep. So our body's like, ooh, I got energy, let's do something. You know, it doesn't know. It doesn't know to sleep. And on the flip side, I know especially with me, it can be hard to sleep when you're hungry, and sometimes I'll wake up and I can't go back to sleep just because I'm hungry. And it's okay to eat a snack, but we're going to try to keep it high protein and a low carb snack. So things like nuts, seeds, eggs, nut butter, stuff like that. So we're staying away from this stuff up here. But again, eating this before bed, or if you wake up in the middle of the night, that is totally okay. So our tips for nutrition, if you wake up at night with the munchies, again, avoid the sweets and opt for those high protein and high fat snacks instead. Okay, we're almost done, you guys. We're doing so good. Sleep factor number 8, sleep supplements. Has anyone here taken melatonin before? Yeah, I have. I used to. So it's very popular. A lot of people know what melatonin is. Now we know it is, you know, a natural hormone we produce, but you can also buy it just about anywhere in gummy form now, pill form, drink form. They have melatonin in every form. So I would suggest, if you do use it, use very sparingly. I would only ever use it in instances like I'm flying to another country, I'm changing time zones. If I got several nights of really bad sleep for some reason, then I would maybe use it. And the reason I would not use it regularly ever is if you take it, it's going to downregulate your body's ability to produce it on its own. So we talked about cortisol, how if you put caffeine in front of you first thing, your body's going to downregulate your need for energy because it has some form of it. If we take melatonin outside of our body, then we're like, well, I don't need to produce it. It's already here. And then if you stop it, your body doesn't just jump right back to it. It doesn't know. So it doesn't produce as much, and then you kind of become dependent on it. And then you need more and more melatonin because it's not the right natural form, and your body gets used to it. It's a whole mess. So I would advise take it very, very sparingly if you need it and if you're desperate. Magnesium is another supplement that you might have heard is like a relaxing thing, like with Epsom salts, but it's actually really important for sleep. It's also the number 1 mineral deficiency in the United States, which I thought was really interesting. And naturally you can find it in foods like leafy greens, sea veggies, seaweed, things like that. But you can also supplement orally. They make pills, they make all sorts of stuff with magnesium in it. I would advise taking a lot of caution, taking the oral forms. There's a lot of different kinds of magnesium, and all of them also act, to put it in a nice way, when you ingest it, it tends to draw water into your colon, and it kind of has some adverse side effects. So people will actually prescribe this as like a natural form for relieving constipation, if you get what I'm saying. So I cannot take magnesium. It wreaks havoc on my body. So I use it topically. So if you use it topically, meaning on your skin, you completely pass the GI tract. So you're not ingesting it, you don't get the diarrhea, you don't get all those issues. You can either soak in an Epsom salt bath, or you can apply topically. I have like a lotion that I put on or a spray. Your body's very good at absorbing it through your skin, and it's awesome. And a lot of people are like, they immediately feel more relaxed after. I don't know if that's placebo or something else, but it can also become part of your nighttime routine to like put on your nice lotion before bed, and it's really nice. And then I'll mention one more supplement, and that's vitamin C. We all think of that as like, oh, vitamin C, immunity. But it's really important for sleep, and it's overlooked a lot of times. And I'll mention why this is, but best to get our vitamin C through whole foods. These are the highest vitamin C containing foods. Camu berry, I just got a powder form of this off Amazon. It's insane. Like one serving has 1,100% of your vitamin C for the day, and it's all in a natural form that your body can use. It's bioavailable. more easy to digest. Acerola cherries, citrus, things like that. We've kind of probably heard about citrus, but these are really easy ways to get it. And like I said, I just use it in powder. I put it in my smoothie, easy. And the reason I say get it through whole foods, they haven't done as many studies on vitamin C and sleep efficiency in terms of taking it as a supplement, because there's a lot of vitamin C supplements, right? You've got Emergency, which I used to take a lot. It's like a powdery drink thing. They have the dissolving tabs. They have gummies. They have so many things that say vitamin C. And they did studies with that in immunity, at least. So they found if you take an isolated form of vitamin C, meaning not from a natural food, there's actually not that much, it doesn't do that much in your body, which made me angry because I'm like, I spent a lot of money on Emergency for a lot of years, and you're telling me it's not really making that much of a difference? So if it's not making much of a difference with our immune system, I'm like, well, chances are it's not helping my sleep either. So I try to eat, get my vitamin C through foods or powders from a natural food. And some tips for these sleep supplements. You can also try more natural sleep remedies, like chamomile tea, which we've heard about. It is actually a natural relaxant. It does something. Kava or kava kava is, you might not have heard about it. I didn't before this, but it's a national drink of Fiji. It's kind of a low-key sedative. It has some sedative properties. I want to try it. I haven't because I'm kind of scared to, but people swear by it. And then valerian root, that's also another natural source. And you can buy all these on Amazon online. It's not like they're scary or anything, but this one I would take caution in because it could be like a moderate sedative if you take too much. But it's been shown to do wonders for people who are in pain, like who can't fall asleep because of pain, or women on their menstrual cycle. So I'm like, I definitely should try that. All right. Sleep factor number 9, our mental state. This is one I struggled with a lot because I have that busy brain. I'm like, I cannot stop it. All right. So I used to get so angry when I'd hear, oh, you need to meditate, you need to learn meditation. I was like, I don't want to learn meditation. That's going to do anything. I do meditate now every day, ironically. But what they didn't tell you, or what they didn't tell me, I guess, is you can't just start doing it. Like, it takes practice. It takes a lot of practice, because I used to try it, and I was like, oh, meditation's not doing anything, or prayer, too. Prayer is a form of meditation. And I found that, like anything, right, to get good at something, you have to practice it. And it can't just be at night. Practicing it throughout the day. So, like, I do it now in the morning, throughout the day. If I just did it at night every time, it'd take me a lot longer to get good at it. So it does do wonders for helping you control your thoughts, but gotta practice at it. Don't give up on it. I do still use a guided meditation app, and there's a ton, like on your phone, podcasts on YouTube, and I know it's gonna sound contradictory to like use guided meditation to fall asleep, but because it's on a device, as long as you aren't looking at your screen, if you can have it next to you, your eyes are asleep, your screen's turned down, like you're not looking at that light, right? It's not going to disrupt you. You are more than welcome to listen to things. Like, that is fine. And set a timer to turn off if you think you're going to fall asleep, or just let it turn off, That is fine. That's the one exception. I'm like, you know what? Okay, having your phone in your bedroom, that's totally fine. Because you're not looking at it, you're not getting excited by it. Talked about practicing. Another thing we can work on is breathing more deeply. And Americans, we have a fast-paced life. We don't even realize we don't breathe very well. Like, our breathing is kind of shallow. It's like, when's the last time you just naturally took a deep breath and just breathed deep for a long amount of time? Like, we don't do that very often. And like meditation, we can train ourselves to breathe better and breathe deeper. And breathing is really interesting. I know it sounds silly, like, oh yeah, breathe deeper, like it'll relax you, but our parasympathetic nervous system is the part of us, that's our rest and digest, opposite of our fight or flight. You guys might have heard of that, nervous system. We need to be in that to be relaxed. That's telling our bodies, okay, there's no threat, I'm chill, I can rest, I can sleep, I can digest, I can do all this stuff. It's hard to make yourself get into that. You can't just be like, okay, buddy, parasympathetic time, like, let's go to sleep. It's like, you can't do that. But they have found that breathing is highly linked to this, which makes sense, right? If you're running from a predator, something's making you nervous, your breathing rate starts to increase. You're getting more nervous. You're like, I need more oxygen. I got to be ready to do something. If you're breathing slow, it's like, okay, there's no threats. Like, I'm fine. Everything's good. I can relax. So the one thing we can control is our breathing, or we can try to. So as you meditate or as you're falling asleep, just take a bunch of deep breaths. Or if you ever feel stressed, that'll help you get out of that fight and flight and more into that rest mode. But they've done studies where people, even if they're freaking out, if they control their breathing, make it slower, it affects your heart rate, your breath rate, all this stuff, stress levels. Like, that's the one thing we can do for our bodies. Thank goodness. And something really cool that nature does, and if you watch, especially dogs, when they're bedding down, you can hear them do this, but they take a deep breath, and at the very top of that breath, they take a second sharp inhale and then an exhale. So it's like, and there's something about that just triggers in your neurons just a relaxation response naturally. And so animals do this a lot. I'm like, okay, well, if animals do it naturally and they're not overthinking all this, then it definitely is doing something. So I thought that was really cool. And then part of the mental state, it's like, yeah, I can, meditate and all this stuff, but I still can't unload everything. Because at the end of the day, we've had a great day before us. We have a great day ahead of us. There's a lot going on. So part of it is unloading that fear of forgetting something before bed. And I do this all the time. I lay down like, oh my gosh, I gotta do this tomorrow. And you just start thinking, you got your calendar up there. You got everything up there. Like, what if I forget something? So super important, super helpful thing. I do this is at the end of the day, I will journal about my day that just happened. In case, say like what I did, who I called, notes I need to make. I will plan out the next day, things I need to do. I just get it all out there. This has been super helpful for me, someone who's type A, neurotic almost, just way too much going on. So journaling has been very helpful for me to get that off my brain so that it can relax, and then I don't have to worry about it as much. I also keep always, because I don't want to use my phone for notes in the middle of the night and turn that bright light on in my face, I'll keep a good old-fashioned pen and paper by my bed, and I have like a really low wattage lamp, so if I can't write in the dark, obviously, but I'll turn that on. It's a lot more forgiving than a bright phone or overhead light. But I keep a pen and paper. If I wake up in the middle of the night or I'm laying there and I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot to add that to my list, because then I'll ruminate on it and think about it. So I'll jot it down, and I'm like, okay, it's down. I'm not going to forget it. I can go back to sleep. And it works surprisingly really good. And then this is kind of back to meditation, but something I'll do, I didn't realize how much tension I was holding until I started doing this. And you can find a body scan. It's a type of meditation. A lot of guided apps have this. They'll walk you through one. But basically all you do when you lay down, you've done your journaling, you've done all that, you've done your deep breathing. I start at my toes, and you literally think about that part of your body, and you purposely relax it. And it's amazing. Like, you think you're laying in bed, you're like, I feel relaxed, until you go up your whole body. Shins, knees, thighs, hips, torso, especially once you get to your head. And you think about releasing that tension. Like, almost always I realize, oh my gosh, I've been clenching my jaw this whole time, or my eyes aren't relaxed, my eyebrows. And it's amazing. You can feel that release of tension. So I will do that, and it feels really good. All right, we're doing so good. Okay, our last sleep factor is making a bedtime routine. And this sounds silly. It's like, oh, it's something kids have. But actually, kids having a bedtime routine is a good thing. We talked about neuroassociation. If we do the same things before bed, like, kids associate that with bedtime. Why don't adults do that? And, some of us do, like, we brush our teeth, things like that. But making a conscious effort to do the right things before bed is also going to help us get tired ahead of time. Most important part, and this one's really hard, is being consistent even on the weekends, because it's going to help keep that circadian rhythm. Your body doesn't know Saturday and Sunday. It's like every day is just a day, right? So if you're like, one day I'm going to stay up really late, or I can just sleep in this day, it doesn't know the difference. All the things we talked about, getting on that natural circadian rhythm, eventually you're going to start waking up naturally on your own and wanting to fall to bed at the same time every day. I don't set alarms anymore. And you hear people who are good sleepers like, I wake up 5 minutes before my alarm every day. That's awesome. And I get tired at the same time every day. Weekends, I don't even want to sleep in anymore, because I'm falling asleep at the right time, and I am getting up. Are we at 3 o'clock?
I'm just.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh my gosh, did I go over time?
I was just looking.
Oh yeah, you're welcome to join if you would like. Oh, good.
Still working though.
Oh no, that's not fun. This is more fun than that. All right, So if we get on that good circadian rhythm, we don't really want to sleep in. Like your body's up and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm up at a 7 or 6:30 on a Saturday. This is weird. But that's good. That means you're naturally working. Yeah. Sorry, Greg, but I don't know. Like you sleep till 10 a.m. on it. I don't know how you do it. Like I cannot do it.
6 every day for work, so
Yeah.
sleep in sometimes.
And there is truth about like if you are chronically sleep deprived, like during the week, sleeping in on the weekends is a way to help regain some. And it's hard because of your job. I understand that as a firefighter, but it's not the greatest. It's hard. It's hard on our bodies, right? It's hard on our minds. Yeah, so to help create this consistent hormone balance cycle, we want to create a routine and start it at least a half hour, ideally 1 hour before bedtime. And we're going to start by limiting our screen time. Yay. So we talked about with daylight. As the light goes down outside, which in summer is a little later, but I will start to, in my environment, I'll turn off my overhead lights, start using, other lights, candles, great, firelight, all that stuff is super great. And you notice that all has reddish hues as well. We want to limit that blue, bright screen time. And I'm not saying, you can't watch your favorite TV show before bed, but we don't want to do it right before bed. And they've found biologically every hour you spend on your device suppresses that melatonin even more for 30 minutes after. So it's hard. If I'm in bed on Facebook, I'm like, okay, I feel really tired. I'm going to go to bed. You turn it off. Like, I can't sleep immediately. It takes me a while. Some people can, yeah, it's very noticeable. And some people can fall asleep, but it's still suppressing that melatonin. So your sleep cycle is going to take a lot longer to take off, and it's going to be slower. So I'm like, I don't care if you think you're a good sleeper, like this stuff is still affecting you somehow. And I mentioned those blue light glasses. They look like, I have super nerdy looking ones, but they literally block blue wavelengths from coming in. And people swear by them. It might also be a neuroassociation. You put those on at night, you're like, oh, immediately get tired because your brain's like, oh, it's close to bedtime. I do use them, but I would never trade it off for not using my device. Like I'm not going to still use my phone in bed. I'm like, oh, because I have blue light glasses on. Because we talked about how I still get that dopamine release, which is making me a little excited from my devices. So blue light glasses, okay, even if you want to watch TV at night with them to kind of help you start to slow down, that's a good thing. But not right before bed. I would still not use any device, like no TV, no laptop, no nothing, which is really, really hard. We talked about setting boundaries, so this is kind of bringing everything together, this routine. So keeping electronics out of the bedroom, using that old-fashioned alarm clock. And then it's like, well, if I can't do TV or video games, like what the heck do I do? It's like people don't know how to just be anymore, myself included. So some of the best activities we could do, and I love this one, is just spend time with your family. We kind of forget about that. Like we always have to be doing something. It's like, just talk. Or spend time with yourself. Yeah, and Greg and I, we like to read together out loud, later in the day before he goes home. And I really enjoy that time. It's like my favorite time of the day, just spending time with someone or calling someone on the phone. Again, you're not staring at a screen. Like, that's totally fine. You want to call your mom before bed or a friend. Really, really good. Reading. Everyone likes to read before bed. That's great, as long as it's something that's not stimulating. I know if I read something with like a lot of horror and action in it, I'll have weird dreams. And it's also hard to fall asleep. So I try to tell people things that have good vibes. So happy books, soothing books, calming things, nothing like depressing. Don't read the news right before bed. That's a terrible thing to do. You could take a warm bath. We talked about the Epsom salt baths. I wouldn't take a bath and then jump right into bed. Remember, we need to lower our core body temperature a little bit, and you might be hot after that. But that's a good way to start relaxing your muscles. You can do yoga, any of that light movement we talked about. You can meditate, listen to a sleepy, calming podcast. You can do your journal. There's so much to do. So any of the things we kind of talked about, you can form your own routine for what you guys like to do. Put your magnesium lotion on. You can have a cup of tea. Just create some kind of habit and do it consistently. And your brain is going to associate that stuff over time, even things like brushing your teeth, putting on our pajamas. If you do in the same order at the same times, man, it works really, really good, especially with kids too. If you have young kids, giving them a routine helps them get tired, and it's awesome. All right. So some tips. We talked about a lot of these, but just a reminder. Start limiting that blue light a little bit earlier. Not saying you can't use, a couple hours before bed, but at least lower the light. There's a lot of apps and things you can use now to help with that blue light besides the glasses. There are settings on our phones for Androids and iPhones. If you need help, just ask someone, they can help you. You can go in there and literally set a timer for certain times of the day. It will switch the color, and at first you're going to be like, oh, it's really weird. It's really red and dark, but it helps. And you can set it to be nighttime mode, which is what mine is called, certain times of the day. I think after 8 o'clock I use it, 7 o'clock. And then there's a free app called Flux that I have on my laptop. If your laptop doesn't have a thing you can also control it by, and that does the same thing. It'll get rid of those blue hues and make it a little more red. So just things like that. Oh my gosh. That was an hour of very vigorous talking, but I really appreciate you guys being here, and we made it. So you have all my information. If after this you have any questions about what we talked about, or you're struggling with something, please reach out to me. It's all up there. And I know that was a lot of information, but I don't have a lot of time every week or every month. Oh my gosh, once a month. So I really try to just throw it all out there. So if you guys kept up, that's really, really awesome. If you have any questions, we can go over that. But I am going to mention real quick, if you don't follow the Facebook or check the website, that is where I update all my events. I have those flyers for the detox program I'm doing at a really, really discounted price. I'm partnering with the rec center where I work because I think it's super awesome. A lot of people hear about detox and they think, oh, I'm going to have to live on water for a week or starve myself or something. There are detoxes like that, but they're not really that great for you. So I want to introduce a really healthy version of detoxing and then guide through 4 1-hour sessions. It's super fast, super easy, but I have those flyers. If you guys ever need help beyond this, personalized things, I do health coaching on everything from mental issues, relationship issues, mostly health issues. But we do group sessions and one-on-one. So ask me anytime if you need help, if you guys have any questions at all. So thank you guys for listening.